Feels like holding a giant egg, like a dinosaur egg or a big ostrich egg. So why does my Aprilia keep letting me down? Today, I'm going to answer that question. My Aprilia keeps letting me down because I keep letting it down. Almost every single issue that I've had with this bike has been my fault or the fault of probably the previous owner. I don't know. I hate to say like this isn't like a Japanese bike where you can just beat it up and it'll just continue to run. Because the thing about the Japanese bikes, sure, they are a little bit over-engineered, but they will fall apart too. It's like they make it for a crowd that isn't gonna change the oil, you know. We're not trying to compare Japanese to European bikes here, because really you can't really compare the two. You can go off of statistics or whatever, but at the end of the day, most of your problems are going to be your own damn fault. I had tried to start it up there today, and this was like the second or third time after I had lost my coolant in this line here that we can see right here. So we lost our coolant out of that line, and then it got pretty hot. I actually ran it for 700 kilometers after, and she was running beautifully. Absolutely nothing wrong. Like, it just didn't miss a beat. I thought maybe it was backfiring a bit more than it did before, but it wasn't enough to really even notice. I go to start it up to go into town, and I need to buy some paint stripper. This was the reason I was buying the paint stripper. Whatever primer that Aprilia uses from the factory does not come off with paint stripper. I don't know why this one isn't primered. It's got a little hole in it. That's for the MXV. And I've got a little repair to make on the MXV, but that's why I have that baby. So I go to turn this over. Cranking, and I go through this cycle until the battery dies, and I've got a good battery in that thing. That's a lithium-ion Shirai, and I put it back in the shop, and then I take that bike out to town. Me and my buddy, he had noticed that the spark plug boot, there's a little metal ring that goes on the top of the spark plug, and it had broken off onto the spark plug. And I thought, oh gee, if that's all it was, and it wouldn't start because it wasn't getting spark in the front cylinder and the rear one not having enough oomph to get it turned over and to run on one cylinder. I thought, oh, that's not a big deal. I replaced this with one off of the MXV because they're all universal. You can buy these NGK VD05 EMH. They're like $20 a pop or whatever. And they just have like a little screw and they thread onto this cord here. But he pulled the plug. And he said it looked like it had been fouled. So we switched the plugs too. And then what we do is we go ahead and fire it up to see what's wrong. So we fire it up and the thing immediately just starts smoking white smoke out of the tailpipe. And it's just billowing out, right? And it's even coming out of the seams and the exhaust, like at the connectors here, like out here and out in between this here and out in between this ring at the head. It's coming out everywhere, this thick white smoke. And I shut it off because I'm like, oh fuck, that's a head gasket leak. And it wasn't coming out the other one. Now these are separated pipes, so they're one-to-one. They're not, they don't have a crossover pipe. So you can tell which cylinder is acting up. He was looking at it some more, thinking about it. We were kind of, because it was blowing liquid out of the tailpipe. So we were kind of looking at it, and he couldn't determine whether it was oil or whether it was water or whether it was fuel. So he decided, well, let's start it up again and then see if it'll just run for a little bit or if it'll clear up. So I was hesitant, but I decided to start it up again. It started spewing smoke out again, but then it eventually died down. So what we thought was maybe it was just a buildup of extra fuel, because when I was cranking it over, it was spraying fuel into the cylinder, not burning it. We ended up going out into town. It seemed to be acting normal now. So we were like, okay, well, let's shack it up for the night and then go for a ride tomorrow. So that's what we did today, and putted around and got some coffee. And I noticed even when it was warm, it was a little bit harder to start than usual. And so obviously there's an issue. So we're like, okay, well, we're taking this thing straight home. And just as I was getting home, he noticed out of the coolant overflow bottle here, this little hose here is the overflow from the overflow bottle. And it was leaking coolant out of there like nobody's business. So it was literally leaking coolant all over the rear tire here. If you can kind of see where at the edge, right at the edge here, and all this water splashing here, see all that? That was literally wet as I was coming home. So we get it back into my shop and we pull the plugs again. And this time we put the boroscope down in the cylinder after we'd let it cool down, and I ended up riding that bike for a little bit after. But then we come back here and we let it cool down, pull the plugs. The plugs are white. Okay, this isn't fuel anymore. And now that would be an issue with the head gasket, and that would almost certainly be because of our little overheating issue because I neglected that pipe there. What we ended up surmising from the fact that it was blowing coolant out of the overflow onto the rear tire was that when it was on the compression stroke, it was pushing pressure into the opening in the head gasket through into the coolant system and pushing the water up from the radiators into the overflow jug, and it was just literally spewing all of its coolant out through pressure. So we're still not sure if it's burning coolant on the rear cylinder. So we're not sure if the rear head gasket is gone, but I noticed the plug, it did look, I don't know, I guess it looked kind of white, but we didn't have any smoke coming out of the rear tube, and it didn't look like it had burned. Like I stuck the boroscope in there too, and it didn't look like it had been burning any coolant. So with that being said, there's my issue with Aprilia, me. Some other people might do this a different way, but this is the way that I do it. I've taken every single part of these bikes off several times, so I've essentially done it 3 or 4 times. But what you want to do, this thing just twists off here, this little screw, and pull the seat off, and you can pull it. Once you got that up, you pull it forward. Don't nudge it too much, you just want to unlock it. There is a screw here, and I've already kind of pulled some of this stuff off here. There is a screw for your fuel tank, and that just lifts straight up like that. So here's the little clip thing. So you just clip it right in to both of those holes. Pull that up. Actually, you know what I should do? Since I'm going to be unplugging wires, you want to go ahead and pop your battery out. Now, conveniently, I've already dropped this, but it's just 3 8mm bolts. And there's a couple of rings, spacer rings here. So try not to lose those. You might find that one of them is actually taller than the others. So just kind of keep an eye on where some of those go. Now, what I like to do is to keep all of my nuts and bolts separated. Now we pull our fuel tank up, just kind of spring it into there, and voila, she hooks right up. So now that we've got our battery taken off, we can start disconnecting. This is for our fuel pump. Now I've already gone ahead and taken the springs off of the exhaust header here, and the bolts taken out of where it meets to the cylinder head. So I can just pull this straight out. Twist it around, pull it out. Yeah, see that's coolant there. You can see in the head there. Oh yeah, I think that's even. You can even see green. Take your air box off. Now there might be a couple of screws in here. Some people like to remove these as well because it lets more airflow in. I don't. But they just unhinge, like just open the flaps up on either side. But there are these screw holes here. So if your airbox has never been opened or somebody has bothered to put the screws back into it, we're gonna take our skid plate off. There we go. And we're taking our rear brake lever off. Oh, it looks like I got a little scratch there. I didn't notice that before. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna thread it right back in there. Now, I'd already went ahead and drained most of the engine oil, but we're gonna go ahead and drain the rest of it now. Now that we're here, we might as well take off the overflow. I've replaced this line with a clear silicone tube, just because I like to see if it is sucking back coolant. So we're gonna take our skid plate off here. Now there's a bolt on the other side, or a nut on the other side of this bolt, and so I'm just kind of putting my finger on it. And there's our nice long bolt. Now there's a couple of these little things. You got to kind of pull those out before you take this off. Right, pull it right off like that. It can hold on to its own bolts. We're going to drain the rest of this oil. Anything remaining in this flow control valve. I had actually drained most all of this oil because we had looked at this sight tube here, and can you see? Can you see? That looks like a lot of milk at the bottom of that, eh? We were real concerned that the water was getting into the oil, so I immediately drained it to check it, but it was actually, the oil's perfect, so I don't know, some kind of condensation or something, or some kind of maybe coolant's getting into the airbox somehow, who knows. So we're gonna loose our plug here. I'm gonna put our plug back in. Gonna put our flow control valve back in. Oil filter out. That's a brand new O-ring. And we're gonna put our filter and our spring in a separate bag and then put the cover back on. Yeah, I know this radiator looks damaged here, and it is, but it doesn't leak. Let's take our starter cable off, slide it up that cable there. It's just that one little nut on this here bolt. All right, grab that off. That just pulls up, and then you can put this nut right back on the starter. I'm not gonna reuse this coolant, so we're just gonna empty it right out into this dirty funnel. Now, the lowest point in the system for coolant should probably be by this water pump here. So we can just undo this lower hose and most of it should come out. Clip that little homemade job there too. While we're there, let's see how much coolant is actually in this thing. Not all that much. All right. We've got this oil pressure sensor thing unplugged that just lifts right up. We've also taken our left side radiator cover off there. Also taken off this coolant hose here. It's tucked behind up under to this little male and just behind the frame there. Now, if you have one of those little clip style ones instead of a hose clamp, which is the clip ones are the OEM style. For example, this one right here, see that? We're gonna take this kind of tool right here, get it up underneath there and just kind of pry it off. Boom, just like that. So we've taken this oil line off. Now this is the blow-by hose here. We've already went ahead and unclipped these two little clips here for the stator and the crank position sensor. We'll take our spark plug boot off of the rear. Now I've already taken off this hose here. This is like a clear hose, and on the other ones it's brown. That drains out from the airbox here. Try and take our pliers, get this exhaust spring off here. There we go. All right, this particular exhaust system likes to unbolt over here. There's a washer in there somewhere. Take that exhaust spring off. Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna take this whole can off. There we go. All right. Tell you what, we're putting that one right back on there. Now I have yet to drain the gearbox oil, so that's what we're gonna do next. I'm just gonna put it back in the jug it came out of because it's literally only got 100 clicks on it. That should do it for the gearbox. Gonna open this little rubber cap off. Pull that up. Open up this boot. There. Get that clutch cable out of that clutch lever. Pull that up like that. Now we should be able to get the bottom one off. And here we go. We have our oil passage lines that go from the reservoir into the engine. And we're just going to use this tool. Pop open these clips here. Should be fairly easy. And pull off these rubber lines. I'm surprised how pliable these rubber lines are with how many heat cycles they have on them. Gotta have strong hands to do that, I tell you. Goodness. This little clear hose here goes for our gearbox pressure vent. And formerly this would route right into the back of the airbox down here, but I plugged that off. So if you can see that in there, I plugged that off because I noticed if it would rain, the water would get into the airbox and it would drain. A lot of it would drain into the gearbox and get the gearbox oil milky. I rerouted it to this silicone line here to our little K&N filter, and it should work perfect. Now this little tensioner clip here doesn't really work for this smaller size line, but well, now that that clutch cable is released, we can kind of take it out from this side. Boy, that really it's got wore down on there. Don't have to take it all the way, just get it out of the way of this clip here. I suppose now we can do the throttle cables, and depending how easy you find it to get into there, you might not have to take half of the airbox off, but I found last time I ended up having to take this top part of technically the middle part of this airbox off here to get the throttle cables off. Now I think there's 5 screws in back here. Who mixed up a screw? Looks like it has a different thread pitch too. One's probably for the back. Alright, now that we've unscrewed all those screws, let's take this out. A couple of breather lines over here I forgot about, but those will just pull right off. Just like that. There we go. Whenever you do, don't pry too hard. Alright, now let's find the best way. Get those 2 screws out, pull this cap back, split the 2 halves, don't lose this middle separator piece here, pull the 2 halves off, reassemble that halfway, and if you need to label this one, you're not paying attention. You need to remove one at a time. So this one on the front side goes around the back side, and this one on the back side goes around the front side here. I mean, there's really only one way those can go on anyway, so don't worry about it too much. But that'll allow us to slacken the line now to pull our cables out. There's that one. There we go. Kind of finicky. Now there's this, I guess you'd call that a grommet. Find where these throttle cables are here. Give each one of them a tug. That'll pull it back out of where they mount. You probably pull that grommet along with it too, but you ever played Doctor? Trying to get the rest of those out. Should just slide, theoretically, out of the way when we drop the engine. Stand her up straight. And just loosen the rear wheel here. There we go. All right, now that we've loosened the rear wheel, we should be able to slide it forward to get the chain off the front here. Loosen these two bolts, collect the spacers. Here we go. What I'm going to do is take note of the position, exact position of this clip. So we're going to set it facing up. I'm going to try and roll this forward enough, get that off, open that up a bit. There. Now we can pull this off completely. Kind of have to turn it a certain way because these 17-tooth sprocket, it's even kind of dug into the swing arm there a bit. They are very tight on there. I think factory is 16. So this taller part here goes on the rear towards the engine. And then we're going to set our clip back in the same correct position. What you've noticed perhaps is we've already removed this ground clamp here. Connector we can remove. This bottom one here, the tab is on the bottom of the thing. That's our coolant temperature sensor. Senses the temperature in the rear head, and then it turns the fan on accordingly. Don't forget this main connector. I never claimed to be a professional. There's not many other people on YouTube showing you exactly how to do all this stuff. And I think, for the bike's age at this time, people need to know how to do these things. Because when they try to attempt to do it themselves and they just don't know, the amount of probability that somebody somewhere is going to screw something up, as I have done before. So to drop the engine here, now there's 3 engine mounts. There's this one that bolts the swing arm on. There's this one in the middle here. And then there's one way up underneath there. She'll be on there pretty tight. Wonder if I should paint that. Push this through. Now, careful when you're taking this out because this bike probably will move. Although the shocks, the rear shock is still holding it on though, so shouldn't move that much. All right. Beautiful. There's a nut and there's a washer. And we're probably going to have to push that through from the other side. There we go. I don't see a washer. There probably should be a washer, but whoever took it apart before neglected that. I knew there was something I was forgetting. Freaking fuel line. All right, and yeah, I'm going to wait till I have another set of hands here to take that last bolt out. So there she is. The engine is out. Sorry I wasn't able to film the actual taking out of the engine, but I had a friend help me, and out of respect for privacy and everything, I decided not to film it. But there was a couple of things actually that I forgot, namely this main plug here for, I believe, the fuel injectors. It's coming from the ECU into the airbox anyway. These two, now not that I really forget these, but 2 spacers that go between the frame and the engine. So here's our lovely engine, all ready to be taken apart. Don't forget, like I say, this main connector here. It's got this little rubber grommet in the airbox there. So yeah, the engine, it's not super heavy. Like, it's a bit like, honestly, it feels like holding a giant egg, like a dinosaur egg or a big ostrich egg or something. Because it's, if you drop it, it'll probably break. Something will break on it anyway, and you're going to have a bad day. And it's also pretty cool to think that, this thing can get you, like 180 kilometers an hour or more. And you're holding this freaking engine in your arms. I don't know. That's freaking cool to me. But yeah, there she is. If you guys have any tips or tricks that you have taken the engine out of your own bike several times before, please leave it in a comment below if something is can be done easier. If If I did something wrong, let me know too. I'm not closed off to constructive criticism either. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully if you were looking to take the engine out of your own bike, that you know a little bit more about the procedure now and are able to do it yourself. Like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this.